Astor presents the Screen Guild Players. The Screen Guild play tonight, Shadow of a Doubt. The starring players...
This is Deanna Durbin.
And this is Joseph Cotten.
Tonight, Lady Astor presents the Screen Guild Players in an adaptation of Alfred Hitchcock's current Universal screen hit, Shadow of a Doubt, a psychological murder mystery, starring Deanna Durbin as young Charlie and Joseph Cotten as her Uncle Charles. Young Charlie tells our story.
Merry Widow Waltz. I guess you all know the Merry Widow Waltz. But have you ever heard it played in church? It's strange, isn't it? But then everything about this story is so strange, right from the beginning. I suppose the beginning was that day at home. You see, we live in Santa Rosa, a little town in Upper California. A very little town, where nothing ever seemed to happen. And I guess that afternoon it had me down a bit.
Now, Charlie, that's no way to talk.
What's the matter, Charlie? Don't you feel well?
I'm perfectly well, Mother. I've just been thinking, that's all. And I come to the conclusion that I give up. I simply give up.
Give up what?
Dad, have you ever stopped to think that this family's just gone to pieces?
Oh, we have?
Of course we have. We just sort of go along, but we don't get anywhere.
Oh, I don't know, Charlie. The bank gave your father a raise last month.
Yeah, the second raise in 5 years.
Money. How can you talk about money when I'm talking about souls? What we need is someone to take us out of this rut.
Have you any suggestions?
Well, I was thinking that... Mother, I'm going to wire Uncle Charles.
Oh, darling, you're not going to ask for money.
Of course not. Money wouldn't help. I'm going to invite him for a visit.
Now, Charlie, you can't ask a busy man like that to come all the way from the east, even if you can reach him. You know, he moves around so much that...
I'll reach him, all right. And he'll come for me. I'm named after him. And we're the only relatives he has, and besides, do you know what?
What, dear?
I can't explain it exactly. It's just a feeling. I mean, well, somehow I think he wants to come.
Hello? Postal Union? Will you take a telegram, please, to Mrs. Joseph Newton, Santa Rosa, California? Surprise. Coming out to visit. Stop. Arrive Thursday and try and stop me. Love to all and a kiss for Charlie from her Uncle Charlie. That's right, that's a signature. Uncle Charlie. How much? Yes, I've got the exact change right here.
Yes, that was the message they handed me when I went into the telegraph office to send my wire to him. It was almost as though he'd heard me calling, 2,000 miles away. And then almost before we knew it, he had arrived. Tall and slim, and such a boyish smile. No wonder Mother was so crazy about her brother, even seeing him so seldom. At dinner that night, he was completely charming, and generous, too, with all the lovely presents he'd brought.
A little something for you, Joe. I hope you like it.
Say, I've never had a wristwatch, Charles.
You've got one now. Here, Emmy. This is for you.
Oh, a fur scarf. Oh, Charles, I've always wanted
Mother,
one.
it's perfect. It's exactly right.
And I expect to be paid for it, too.
Paid for it?
Oh, Joe, he means that banana cream pie. I'll go and bring it in.
Oh, wait, Emmy. I'll give you a hand.
Gave him quite a start, didn't I?
No, Uncle Charles, you've made us all very happy.
Not yet, not all of you. Here's your present, Charlie.
Oh, I didn't mean that. I don't want a present. Please don't give me anything.
No.
Well, I can't explain it, but, well, it would spoil things if you gave me anything.
You're a strange girl, Charlie. Why would it spoil things?
Because we're not just an uncle and a niece. It's something else. I know things about you.
You do?
Oh, yes. I know that you don't tell people a lot of things. I don't either. And I have a feeling that inside of you somewhere, there's something nobody knows about.
Something nobody knows?
Something secret and wonderful. I'll find it out.
It isn't good to find out too much, Charlie. Now, open your hand. There you are.
Thank you.
Well, you haven't even looked at it.
I don't have to look. No matter what you gave me, it would be the same.
Here, let me show you. It's a ring. An emerald ring. A real one.
Oh, it's beautiful. And you've had something engraved on it. That's different.
Well, I haven't, but I will if you like.
Yes, you have, Uncle Charlie. It's very faint. See it? On the inside, T.S. from B.M. Why,
Well-
it's somebody's initials.
Can you imagine? That jeweler rooked me. He told me it was new. Here, I'll take it back, Charlie. Give it to me.
Oh, no, it doesn't matter. I like it.
But, Charlie, you don't want to go around with a
Here it
ring.
is, Charles. Your favorite dessert, if I remember.
You see, Uncle Charlie? I was meant to keep it.
Yes. I suppose you were.
You see, now it's something special between you and me. I'll never give it away to anyone.
Charles, why don't you go inside and rest?
Oh, I need a little exercise. Work off that meal.
Oh, you're not used to helping with the dishes.
Nonsense. Where do I put these dry glasses?
Oh, just set them on the cupboard.
We'll be done in a jiffy.
Charlie, be careful there. That's a good set, you know. Maybe you'd better not sing.
I can't get that tune out of my head. Maybe if someone told me what it is.
It's a waltz.
Yes, but what one?
Oh, well, your father would know. Too bad he had to go to that meeting.
The funniest thing. Sometimes I get a tune in my head like that, and pretty soon I hear someone else humming it, too. I think tunes jump from head to head. Uncle Charlie, do you know what it is?
Why, no. No, I don't know.
I know it's a waltz. And it's Victor Herbert.
Yes, that's it. The Blue Danube Waltz.
No, wait, I know. It's the Merry Widow.
Oh, I'm sorry, Emmy. It's one of the good ones,
Oh,
too.
nonsense, Charles. We have plenty of glasses.
Mother, should we chase him out before he smashes the rest?
Yes, that's a good idea. Charles, you march right into the parlor and sit yourself down.
All alone? But that'll be fun.
No, it won't. I mean, not if you read our evening paper. It's awful.
Come in.
I brought you some water, Uncle Charlie, in case you get thirsty during the night.
Thank you, Charlie. It's very thoughtful. See, you've got the evening paper, too. Going to read in bed?
Oh, no, I'm going to leave it in Dad's room. He'll want to look through it when he gets home.
Hardly worth it, I'd say. Well, pleasant dreams.
Uncle Charlie.
Yes?
Uncle Charlie, I know a secret about you don't think I know.
What secret?
Remember I said you couldn't hide anything from me because I'd find it out?
Hmm.
Well, I know there was something in the evening paper about you.
About me? In the evening paper?
Mm-hmm. You read the paper, and page 3 is gone. It was something about you, wasn't it? And you didn't want us to see it. Now that I know, you might as well tell me.
I guess you've got me, Charlie. Only it wasn't about me. It was someone I used to know.
Well, why don't you tell me? You've got that page stuck right there in your pocket. I can see it sticking out. I think I'll just...
Stay out of my pocket. It's none of your business.
Uncle Charlie, you're hurting my wrists, your hands.
Oh. Charlie. Charlie, I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just fooling. That story wasn't anything, just some gossip. Not very pretty. Not for you to read. Forget it, will you?
Of course, if you say so.
That's a girl. Good night, young Charlie. Pleasant dreams.
I guess I did forget about that paper. Anyway, for a while. You see, the very next day, those survey men phoned, and they said we'd been picked as a typical family, and could they ask questions and take pictures and everything. Well, you can imagine we were pretty excited. All except Uncle Charlie. He seemed more annoyed, and he went to his room and shut the door and wouldn't come out. And then when the survey men came over, I had to answer all the questions. You see, Mother was straightening up the kitchen for the pictures, so I showed them both around the house. The upstairs, too.
Mighty pleasant little home, Miss Newton.
I've been hoping we could do it over, Mr. Graham.
That's typical, too. Whose room is that?
Oh, that's mine, but my uncle is using it now.
Miss Newton, could I get a picture? You know, typical girl, typical room.
Well, my uncle's resting, Mr. Saunders. I really don't want to disturb him.
Oh, naturally. Say, is there a back stairs?
Oh, yes, right down the hall.
Then I'll bet you 50 cents your uncle is out.
You're just trying to get Mr. Saunders in there to take a picture, isn't he, Mr. Saunders?
That's right.
Besides, I know my uncle's in there.
I'm still betting he isn't. Want to take me up?
All right. Uncle Charlie, may I come in?
You see?
Why, you were right. He's gone. Funny he should do a thing like that.
Maybe you don't know him as well as you think you do.
Of course I do. I know him very well. Are you trying to tell me I shouldn't think he's so wonderful?
Well, not exactly.
Someone coming up the porch, Jack.
Well, I always say the more the merrier. Miss Newton, is that your uncle?
Oh, yes, it is. Uncle Charlie.
Guess I'll get a picture of the hall. Right.
What are you trying to do with that flashlight? Blind me?
Uncle Charlie, he was taking pictures in my room.
Well, I'm not in your room, and I don't like to be photographed. I'm afraid I'll have to ask you for the film, sir. I must insist. Give it to me, please.
Okay, Fred. Let him have it.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Well, that's that, I guess. Let's go.
He was so strange, I don't understand.
I think I could help you out on that.
You could?
Sure. Suppose you have dinner with me tonight. Then we can sit in the park and have a nice long talk. And so I thought I'd better tell you. This job of mine isn't always easy, Charlie.
Then you're really a detective?
Charlie, listen.
You're not on a survey at all. You lied to us. You just wanted to get in our house.
Listen, Charlie, you've got to trust me.
When you've done nothing but lie. You probably didn't even want to take me out tonight.
But I did. Honestly, I did. You don't know what it's meant to me to take you out and talk with you and get to know you.
Just part of your job.
Oh, don't be silly. When I came to this town to find a man, I hadn't counted on you. I hadn't counted on your mother or your family.
Find a man? What man?
We're not even sure if he's the right one. We won't know till they check that picture we wired east, the one we took of your uncle.
But you gave that one back.
No, we just gave him an empty roll of film.
Another trick.
Now, Charlie, please.
My uncle hasn't done anything. He knows it would kill my mother if he did. Why don't you go away and leave me alone?
Because you're a nice girl, Charlie. Because no matter what, you're going to help me do my job. Charlie, look, think. How much do you know about your uncle?
I know all I want to know. He's good and kind and generous. He came here and made us all so happy. He hasn't done anything to...
To what? To what, Charlie?
Nothing. You wouldn't understand it. It's something I've got to figure out for myself.
Why, Charlie, reading the newspaper at a public library. Don't you get it at home?
Oh, yes, Miss Corcoran, but there was something in it a couple of days ago. I meant to copy it, and they threw it away. A recipe.
Well, I hope you find it. And put the paper back when you're through.
I'll find it all right. It can't be anything really awful. Not enough to... Murderer sought. Police are conducting a coast-to-coast search for the man who strangled Thelma Shenley, former musical comedy star. Wanted for the deaths of 2 other wealthy widows, the fugitive is known as the Merry Widow Murderer.
And so the curtain falls on Act One of Shadow of a Doubt, starring Joseph Cotton and Deanna Durbin. Before we hear Act Two, a word from our hostess, Lady Esther.
I heard a saying a long time ago that keeps coming back to my mind when I think of American women in uniform. The saying was, when the picture is beautiful, you need only the simplest frame. Now, a conservative uniform is indeed a simple frame for a woman's face. So are simple civilian clothes, for instance, tailored suits and shirt-maker dresses. Yet have you noticed how these simple clothes make greater demands on a woman's complexion? Yes, and how it has become even more important for her to use a face powder that brings out all the soft, natural loveliness of her skin. Now, thousands of women say that Lady Esther powder has done more to give their skin a soft, flawless, radiant look than any other face powder they've ever used. And here's a very good reason why this is true. You see, Lady Esther face powder is different because it's made differently. When ordinary face powder is made, it's usually just mixed, just sifted. But with Lady Esther face powder, this is only the first step. And though its texture at that point is the texture of ordinary face powder, it's what I call raw. Because I take my powder at this so-called finished point and put it through a second blending, my patented twin hurricane blending. This time it's blown, yes, blown by hurricanes, until it becomes not just powder particles, but a sheer, flattering film of beauty. That's why Lady Esther face powder goes on smoothly, evenly, clinging delicately to your skin for hours. Try it, and see if you don't agree with thousands of other women who say that Lady Esther face powder does more for their skin than any other face powder they've ever used.
And now the curtain rises on Act Two of Shadow of a Doubt, starring Deanna Durbin as Charlie and Joseph Cotton as her Uncle Charles. Young Charlie continues her story.
I don't know how long I sat there in the library, staring at that paper and not seeing a thing. But suddenly I realized that I was chilled, as though someone had drawn a blind across the sun. I tried to tell myself it wasn't true, but there was the ring he'd given me, the emerald with faint initials in the band. Her initials, Thelma Shenley, the woman my Uncle Charles had killed. I walked for hours that afternoon, trying to decide what I should do. And after dinner, I walked some more. I was just at the park when I heard him call.
Oh, Charlie.
I hurried on, but he overtook me. I remember I was very frightened.
Hurry, Charlie. Slow down, will you? I want to talk to you. Come on, let's sit on this bench.
No.
I said sit down.
You're hurting my wrist again.
I'm sorry, Charlie. I guess I got excited. You can't blame me, really, when I see something coming between us two. Tell me, is it something those survey men told you, that fella Graham?
He's got nothing to do with it. I hope he never knows anything more about you.
Charlie, that's no way to talk about it. After all, I've been around a bit. I've been chasing around the globe since I was 16. Done some pretty foolish things, too. Made some pretty foolish mistakes. Nothing serious, just foolish. I mean, like... What's the matter? What are you staring at?
Your hands.
Oh, Charlie, now don't start imagining
How
things.
could you do things like that? You're my uncle, my mother's brother. We thought you were the most wonderful man in the world.
What do you know?
I know I said I'd never give this ring up. But I can't wear it now. Not with her initials in it. Here, take it.
You think you know something, don't you? You think you're the clever little girl who knows something. Well, what do you know about women like that? Have you ever seen them as I have, every day in the best hotels, every day by the thousands, drinking their money, eating their money, losing their money at bridge, playing all day and all night, smelling of money, proud of their money? Horrible, faded, fat, greedy women.
But they're alive. They're human beings.
Are they, Charlie? Are they human, or are they fat, wheezing animals? What happens to animals when they get too fat and too old?
Oh, stop it, please.
See, you don't understand. All I want is a little help.
From me?
Oh, I'm so tired, Charlie. There's an end to the running a man can do. This is my last chance. You've got to help me. I count on you, Charlie. You said yourself there was something special between us, and think of your mother. It would kill your mother. Charlie, give me this last chance.
All right. If you'll go away.
Where to, Charlie? Where should I go? Where do you want me to go?
I don't care. Anywhere. Just so you go away from here.
Haven't got a thing in the house for lunch. I couldn't go to the market myself, not with a cake in the oven. Charlie, I've never known you to stay in bed so late.
I'm sorry, Mother. I didn't sleep very well.
Your Uncle Charlie's been asking for you. He's on the front porch. Here's the list for the grocer, dear.
I'll run along, then.
Well, the back stairs again? Charlie, why do you always go that way? Those stairs are so steep. Don't you want to tell your uncle good morning?
I'll see him when I get back. It's shorter this way.
Oh, well, watch yourself, dear.
Don't worry. I know these steps by... Mother!
Charlie, what happened?
I tripped. I think the step was loose.
Oh, good heavens, Charlie. You might have been killed.
Yes. I might have. But I wasn't.
Yes? Oh, good evening, Charlie. Come in.
I wanted you to know I almost had an accident this morning.
Yes, your mother told me. I was very worried.
When are you leaving, Uncle Charlie?
Leaving? My dear girl, do you know what I did today? I went down and put a little money in the bank where your father works, $40,000 in cash. Of course, there isn't quite $40,000 left now. I gave $1,000 to the Children's Hospital and another $1,000 to the community chest. It made your father quite important.
When are you leaving?
You know, I've been thinking, Charlie. I want to settle down, live in a place where people know me, have some money in the bank, some sort of business, be a part of this family.
I see.
The sensible thing for you is to be friends with me. I can do a lot for you, Charlie. I can do a lot for all of you.
Not you. We don't want anything from you. If you don't leave, I'll tell what I know.
Don't be silly, Charlie. Who'd believe you? A waltz runs through your head. You don't like the initials on a ring, and you connect it all up with a newspaper clipping. Now you haven't even got the ring.
You have it.
I? Ridiculous. I gave it to you. You see?
Uncle Charlie, I don't want you here. I don't want you to touch my mother. So go away. I'm warning you, go away or I'll kill you myself. Do you know what it means to live in terror? I did. I knew he wouldn't stop at anything. At any moment, there might be another accident. And he'd be very sorry, and I'd be dead. My only weapon was the ring. If I could find the ring, I thought I'd frighten Uncle Charlie into leaving town. It was the next night that I got my chance. Mother had invited all our leading citizens to meet her brother. And while they were downstairs drinking Uncle Charlie's champagne, I was upstairs going through his things. It was rather late when I came down.
Can't I persuade you, Reverend Phillips? Just a drop.
Oh, no thanks.
You know what the psalmist said? Wine maketh glad the heart of man.
Your gift to the church has given us cause enough to rejoice. And besides, I'm afraid my parishioners aren't overly familiar with the Psalms.
Well, I always say that... Oh, there you are, Charlie. What kept you so long?
I was looking for my ring, Uncle Charlie. Silly me, I thought I'd lost it.
What an exquisite ring.
It's an emerald, Mrs. Potter, a real emerald. Uncle Charlie gave it to me. For a going-away present.
Yeah, what's that? What's that, going away?
Why, Charles.
Isn't that what you said, Uncle Charlie? Didn't you tell me you were going away?
Yes. Yes, I did.
But, Charles, I didn't mean you.
I'm sorry. I didn't expect it to happen so soon, but I got an important message, you see. A very important message. I'm afraid I'll have to leave in the morning.
Charles, I wish you didn't have to go.
That's the way it is, Emmy. You can't always do the things you like.
Oh, they're going to start. We'd better get off, Emmy. Charlie?
Oh, well, goodbye, Charles. You right,
Of
Walter?
course. You watch yourself on those steps.
Goodbye, Charles.
Goodbye. Oh, Charlie, wait a minute. I want to talk to you.
They'll be starting in a moment.
We can stand right here on the platform. I want you to know that I think you were right to make me leave. Best for your mother and best for all of us.
Oh, we're moving.
She's not very strong, you know, Charlie. I don't think she could stand the shock. Why, I remember once when she was a
train
little
is moving.
girl.
I've got to get off.
Don't be silly.
Let me go. You're hurting my wrist. Your
Sorry,
hands.
Charlie, but I've got
Let
to do
me
this.
go.
Since you know
Let
so
me
much.
go.
No, not yet, Charlie. Not till we're going a little faster. Not till we meet the train that's coming down the other track. No mistakes this time. Each little detail in its place. I've checked it all, you see. There it is now. It's coming fast, Charlie. Almost time to say goodbye. Almost time to say goodbye.
No. they're having the funeral now. It's the biggest funeral Santa Rosa's ever seen. They were all so shocked when I told them how it happened, how Uncle Charlie slipped and fell beneath the train. They're playing the Merry Widow Waltz. I told them that's what Uncle Charlie would have wanted. I don't think I'll ever forget him, and they won't either. They'll always remember the time they heard the Merry Widow Waltz in church.
Thank you, Miss Durbin and Mr. Cotton, for your excellent performances tonight.
We're glad to appear for the Motion Picture Relief Fund, Mr. Bradley. We know how the Relief Fund benefits from these broadcasts, and we know, too, the fine work it does in the industry. In just a moment, you'll hear about next week's show. But first, I would like to have you listen to a word from one of our best-known beauty authorities, Lady Esther.
Thank you, Miss Durbin. I had an interesting letter the other day from a woman who said, "After using your powder, Lady Esther, I know it's as different from ordinary powder as nylon hose are different from lisle stockings." I think any woman understands what she means by that comparison, that Lady Esther powder is so much sheerer, finer, longer lasting than ordinary powders. Now, this difference is no mere claim, and here's a good reason why my powder is different. The reason is a process so different that the government issued an exclusive patent on it. This process takes Lady Esther face powder out of the ordinary class of ordinary powders and makes it a true cosmetic. You see, most powders are just mixed, just sifted, until they reach a so-called finish stage. But instead of stopping at that point, I then put my powder through a second stage, where it's blown by my twin hurricanes until each shade is even, rich, until the texture is exquisitely fine and smooth. That's why so many women speak of my face powder as not just a face powder, but as a true cosmetic that makes them look younger than they really are.
Next week, the Lady Esther Screen Guild Players will present one of the greatest love stories of all time. A story you will remember as a novel and a motion picture. Rebecca, starring Brian Ahern and Joan Fontaine. Be sure to listen. Deanna Durbin and Joseph Cotton will soon be seen together in the Universal production, Hers to Hold. Music on tonight's program was arranged and conducted by Wilbur Hatch. To save materials, buy the larger size of Lady Esther face cream. Truman Bradley speaking for Lady Esther, saying thank you. Good night.
This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Lady Esther presents the Screen Guild Players. The Screen Guild play tonight, Rebecca. The starring players.
This is Joan Fontaine.
This is Brian Ahern.
And this is Agnes Moorehead.
Tonight, Tonight, Lady Esther presents the Screen Guild Players in a radio version of the popular novel and motion picture, Rebecca, starring Brian Ahern as Maxim de Winter, Agnes Moorehead as Mrs. Danvers, and Joan Fontaine in the role she immortalized on the screen. She tells our story.
Last night I went to Manderley again. But even as I saw the iron gate, the winding drive, the great old house itself, I knew, as dreamers always do, that it was just a dream. Manderley was no more. And we can never go back. That much is certain. Yet sometimes in my secret thoughts, I do go back to the strange days of my life, which began for me in the south of France. I was very young and very poor, and because I had no family of my own, I had taken employment as the paid companion of a rich old lady. That's how I happened to be in Monte Carlo. That's how I happened to meet Maxim de Winter. I was walking along the cliffs one day above the sea. I saw a man step toward the edge. To jump, I thought, and almost without knowing it, I cried out, "No, no, stop!"
What the devil are you shouting about? Who are you? What are you staring at?
Well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to stare. I thought you were going to...
Oh, you did you? What are you doing here?
Well, I was only walking.
Get on with your walking, then. I can very well do without your screaming.
That afternoon, they told me who he was. Maxim de Winter, the master of Manderley. They said his wife had died the year before, and that he'd come to Monte Carlo to forget. Oh, I had no right to hope. A dowdy, awkward, penniless girl. But when he spoke to me next day and apologized and asked to go along and watch me sketch, my heart leaped up into my throat and choked the frightened no I might have said. We saw a great deal of each other after that. He was all generosity and charm. We danced and talked, and then one night we walked along the sea. A very lovely night. The air like wine.
You're very quiet this evening.
I was thinking, I wish there could be an invention that bottled up memories like scent, and then I could uncork the bottle and live the memory all over again.
Sometimes the memory might grow stale. Or horrible. Stop biting your nails.
Oh, I wish I were a woman of 36, dressed in black satin with a string of pearls.
You wouldn't be here with me if you were. Yeah, good heavens, what brought that on? Here, now. Blow your nose.
I'm sorry, Mr. De Winter.
Don't call me Mr. De Winter. I have a very impressive array of first names. George, Fortescue, Maximilian. You needn't bother with them all at once. My family call me Maxim.
But I'm not your family.
You will be. When we're married.
Married?
Why not? Oh, of course, if you don't love me.
Oh, but I do. I love you most dreadfully. I cried all last night because I loved you so much.
Bless you for that.
Oh, but you don't understand. I don't belong in your sort of world.
And what is my sort of world?
Well, Manderley and... you know what I mean.
Suppose you let me be the judge of that. Only you'll have to promise me one thing.
What?
Promise me you'll never wear black satin and pearls, and that you'll never be 36 years old.
Mrs. Maxim de Winter, mistress of Manderley. Oh, I said it over and over again to myself, all through our honeymoon, and still I couldn't believe it was true. Then, suddenly, we were home at Manderley. The wide green lawns, the curving road, the vastness of the house itself. The staff lined up to welcome me.
Oh, darling, this is Frank Crawley, who manages the estate.
I'm glad to meet you, Mrs. De Winter. I'm terribly happy for Maxim's sake.
And this is Frith, the butler.
We're glad to welcome, madam.
Robert, the second man.
We hope madam will like it here.
The cooks, the maids, the gardeners, they all seemed glad to have me there. All but the housekeeper, Mrs. Danvers.
Alice will come up and help you dress, madam.
Thank you, Mrs. Danvers.
Alice is the parlor maid. She'll look after you till your own maid arrives.
Oh, but I haven't any maid. I'm sure Alice will do very nicely.
I'm afraid not, madam. It's usual for ladies in your position to have a personal maid.
Well, if you think so. Mrs. Danvers, I do hope we'll be friends. This sort of life is new to me, and I'll rely on you. You've been here at Manderley for a long time, haven't you?
I came when the first Mrs. De Winter was a bride.
Oh. Mrs. De Winter. The first Mrs. De Winter. Sometimes through the days that followed, it seemed that she was Maxim's wife, not I. In every room there was some little sign of her. A glove, an address book, or correspondence paper with her name engraved on it. Rebecca. That was her name. I learned to know it very well. And if I once forgot and tried to make myself the mistress of my home, Danvers was always at my side. If I wanted a fire in the drawing room.
Mrs. De Winter never lit the fire in here till afternoon.
Or if I spoke of going for a stroll.
Mrs. De Winter always instructed the gardeners after lunch.
Or if I left a salad to the cook.
Mrs. De Winter was most particular about salads, madam.
No matter where I turned, Rebecca had been there before, was still there in a sense to mock my helplessness. Not only in the house itself, but outside too. The day I walked along the beach and came upon a lovely cottage in the cove. Her cottage, I soon found out. Her books, her robes, her cigarettes, her monogram on everything. I closed the door and raced back blindly toward the house. And suddenly, Maxim was standing in my way.
Where have you been?
Walking along the beach.
The cottage?
Why, yes.
Did you go inside?
Maxim, the door was open and I...
Don't ever go there again. You hear?
Maxim,
I hate the place. If you had my memories, you wouldn't go there or talk about it or make me think about it.
Oh, Maxim, what is
No,
it?
nothing. Forget it, my dear. Just forget all about it.
Yes? Oh, good morning, Mrs. De Winter. Come in.
I know you're very busy, Mr. Crawley.
Well, the estate does take a bit of managing, especially now that Maxim's back.
Well, am I interfering?
Not at all. Won't you sit down?
Thank you. Well, I was down at the cottage on the beach the other day.
Oh, were you?
Yes, it seems to be going to rack and ruin.
Well, I think if Maxim wanted anything done about it, he'd tell me.
Are those all Rebecca's things down there?
Yes, they are.
What did she use the cottage for?
The boat used to be moored near there.
What boat? What happened to it?
Well, you see, it capsized and sank. The night Rebecca was drowned.
Oh, she was drowned.
She was on the boat alone. There was a storm, and she was washed overboard.
Where did they find her?
Near Edgecombe. About 2 months later, Maxim went up to identify her. It was horrible for him.
Mr. Crawley, please don't think me morbidly curious, and I promise I won't bring this up again, but would you answer just one more question?
If I can.
Tell me, what was Rebecca really like?
Well, I suppose she was the most beautiful creature I ever saw.
She'd been beautiful, very beautiful, and Maxim still loved her. That was all I could think about for days. And then, woman-like, I thought, I'll force him to forget. I'll make him think of me. I'll be beautiful, too. First of all, a new coiffure.
Darling, what on earth have you done to your hair?
Makeup, which I'd never used.
My dear, aren't you wearing too much rouge?
A whole new wardrobe of expensive clothes.
Really, darling, and do you think that dress is quite your type?
Oh, I tried so hard, and I only saw annoyance in his face, or worse, amusement in the bored indulgence that one saves habitually for a child. And still I would not yield. I was so pitifully eager as the summer costume ball approached. I thought, if I can find a costume that will make him proud of me, something different, so that he'll be the envy of his friends. And strangely enough, it was Mrs. Danvers who gave the idea.
If I may suggest it, madam, I think you might find a costume to suit you among the family portraits.
Oh, you mean in the gallery at the top of the stairs?
There's one in particular that might have been designed for you. I'm sure you could have it copied.
Really? Which one?
One of Mr. De Winter's ancestors, Lady Caroline.
Oh, yes, it's very lovely. Oh, do you think he'd like it?
I've heard Mr. De Winter say it's his favorite of all the paintings.
Then that would be a splendid idea. Thank you, Mrs. Danvers. I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful indeed.
Maxim, where's that young wife of yours?
Oh, she'll be down presently. Fussing with her gown, I suppose. It's her first ball, you know.
What is she wearing, Maxim?
Oh, I haven't got the remotest idea. She's keeping a great secret. Why, she wouldn't even let me.
There she is now.
I'm so glad she's coming down. I want... Good heavens.
Good evening, Maxim.
What the devil do you think you're doing?
But, Maxima,
Where did you get that gown?
it's the picture, the one in the gallery.
Go and take it off.
Oh, Maxim, what is it? What have I done?
That was the dress Rebecca wore at the ball last year.
And so ends Act One of Rebecca, starring Joan Fontaine, Brian Aherne, and Agnes Moorehead. Before we hear Act Two, a word from our hostess, Lady Esther.
Sometimes I see a girl who has what I call an old-fashioned face, because her face is too heavily made up. And the reason I call a heavily made-up face old-fashioned is because that artificial look is as out of date as, well, as the clothes you wore in the 20s. The type of beauty that's in style today is a fresh, natural-looking beauty. Many women don't realize that sometimes it's the powder they use which gives them that made-up, powdery look. Not until they discover what a big difference there can be in face powders. You would understand this difference better if you could read some of the letters I received from women who have changed to Lady Esther face powder. One woman after another has written that it was a revelation to see the improvement a change of face powders could make. When they tried Lady Esther face powder, they said that uninteresting, powdery look gave way to a look of radiant, natural loveliness. Their skin looked softer and younger. You'd understand why this is so if you could see how Lady Esther face powder is made. First, you'd see Lady Esther face powder go through the usual mixing and sifting. And then, even though most powders are considered finished at this stage, I take my powder at this point and put it through the twin hurricane blending. Now, in this second blending, tiny particles of color and powder are blown together at such terrific speed that the powder becomes a miracle of smoothness and evenness. So many women have written me that this new kind of powder seems to give the skin a new, natural-looking beauty.
And now the curtain rises on Act Two of Rebecca, starring Brian Aherne as Maxim de Winter, Joan Fontaine as the second Mrs. de Winter, and Agnes Moorehead as Mrs. Danvers. Mrs. de Winter continues her story.
I thought my world had ended when Maxim spoke to me that way. In hate and anger as our guest looked on, I turned and stumbled up the stairs. As I reached the top, somehow through my tears, I noticed that a door was being closed. The door to her room, Rebecca's room. I knew who would be there. I was wild and hurt, almost hysterical. Straight to that door I walked and opened it.
You've come upstairs. You didn't enjoy the ball very much, did you?
You knew. You knew she wore this gown last year, and you deliberately suggested it for me. Why? Why do you hate me? What have I done to you that you should hate me so?
You tried to take her place. You let him marry you.
I've seen his face, his eyes. They haven't changed since those weeks after she died. I used to hear him walking up and down, all night long, night after night, thinking of her, suffering torture because he'd lost her.
No, I don't want to know.
You thought you could live in her house, walk in her steps, take the things that were hers, but you can't. She's too strong for you. No one ever got the better of her. Never. Never. She was beaten in the end, but it wasn't a man. It wasn't a woman. It was the sea.
Stop it. Stop it.
You're overwrought, madam. I'll open the window for you. Little air will do you good. And you can hear the sea.
No.
Why don't you go? Why don't you leave Mandalay? He doesn't need you. He has his memories. He wants to be alone with her. You've nothing to stay for, nothing to live for, really. Look. Look down there, off the cliff. It would be easy, wouldn't it? Why don't you? Why don't you go? Go on. Go on, don't be afraid. Don't. What's that?
It's hit the rock! Hit the ground! Hit the rock! Down the bay! The coast guard! Make it fast!
Maxim!
Come on, everybody! Down to the bay!
Maxim! Maxim! Frank Crawley!
Right here. And Mrs. De Winter, you shouldn't be out. It's almost dawn.
Frank, have you seen Maxim anywhere?
Not for an hour or more. I thought he'd gone back to the house.
No, he hasn't been at the house at all. I'm worried. Frank, you are too. I can see it in your face. There's something wrong.
Well,
Tell me, what is it?
the diver who went down to inspect the bottom of the ship found the hull of another boat, a little sailboat.
Frank, is it?
Yes, it's Rebecca's.
Where is he, Frank?
In the cottage. He said he wanted to be alone.
Hello.
Maxim, you haven't had any sleep. I've been worried about you.
You love me very much, don't you?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. I wanted to hear you say it just once more.
Oh, but I'll say it many times again. All my life.
No. No, it's all over now. Rebecca has won.
Max, what are you saying?
They sent a diver down. He found another boat.
Yes, I know. Rebecca's boat. Oh, it's terrible for you now, but maybe soon.
It's going to be worse. The diver broke one of the ports and looked into the cabin. There's a body in there.
Then she wasn't alone. Someone was with her.
I'm afraid not. There was no one with her. It's Rebecca's body that's lying in there.
Oh, no.
When I identified that other woman, I knew it wasn't Rebecca. I knew where Rebecca's body was. Lying in that cabin at the bottom of the sea.
How did you know?
Because I put it there. Now, will you look in my eyes and tell me that you love me very much?
Maxim.
You see, I was right. It's all over now.
Oh, no, you're not to say that. I love you more than anything in the world. I've always loved you. Even when I knew you were thinking of her.
Oh, you don't understand.
Whenever you touched me, I knew you were comparing me to her. Whenever you looked at me, spoke to me, walked in the garden with me, I knew you were thinking, this I did with Rebecca. And this, and this.
You thought I loved Rebecca? You thought that? I hated her.
Hated her?
I never had a moment's happiness with her. She was incapable of love, or tenderness, or even simple decency.
Oh, you didn't love her. You didn't love
She used
her.
to taunt me with her faithlessness, with how we'd fooled the world, with what a rotten fraud our marriage was. She knew what the family name meant to me, that I'd suffer anything rather than drag you through the muck of a divorce. Can you understand how I felt?
Of course I can.
She was very clever about her affairs at first. And after a while, she began to grow careless. Why, she even had one of her friends visit her here. Here, in this very cottage. I warned her about that. I told her if I found him on the grounds, I'd shoot them both. And then one night, when she thought I'd gone to London, I came here, hoping to surprise them. But he hadn't arrived as yet. She laughed at me, and she said, Maxim, you know, if I ever have a child, no one could prove that it isn't yours. She must have read what was in my mind, because she laughed again, and she asked, what is it, Maxim? Are you going to kill me? Well, I suppose I went mad for a moment. I must have struck her. She stood staring at me. She looked almost triumphant. And then she fell. Her head hit a heavy piece of ship's tackle. And when I bent down to help her, she was dead.
But you didn't kill her. It was an accident.
I didn't think anyone would believe me. I lost my head. I carried her out to the boat. I put her in the cabin. When we seemed a safe distance from shore, I opened the seacocks and the water poured in. Then I pulled away in the dinghy and watched her sink.
Maxim, no one knows.
Only you and I.
Then, darling, you're safe. Rebecca's dead. That's what we've got to remember. She's dead. She can't speak. She can't harm you anymore.
I identified that other woman.
You could have made a mistake. Oh, darling, darling, I won't let you go now.
Oh, it's too late. I've loved you very much. I shall always love you. But her shadow was between us all along. I knew that Rebecca would win in the end.
No. She hasn't won. No matter what happens now, she hasn't won. Maxim.
Hello? Yes, Frank? Oh, Colonel Julian? Yes, of course. I'll be right up.
Who is it, Maxim? Who's Colonel Julian?
Chief Constable of the county. Wants to talk to me.
Blasted nuisance, this thing, Maxim. Very sorry on all that.
Oh, thank you, Colonel.
Of course, we could make a simple thing of it, following one set of facts.
What facts?
Well, suppose Mrs. De Winter was in the cabin and a squall hit the boat with no one at the helm.
And probably the door jammed and she couldn't get on deck again.
Exactly. Trouble is, this diver fellow claims he found all the seacocks open, and they can only be opened from inside the boat.
No.
So it looks like a clear case of suicide to me.
Suicide?
That's not the truth.
Danvers? I'd prefer it if you knocked
We're
before
all
you...
equal before the law, Mr. De Winter. It's only my duty to tell what I know.
What do you know?
Mrs. De Winter never committed suicide. She wasn't that kind. And besides, she'd been to see the doctor in London just that afternoon. Dr. Baker on Gold Hawk Road.
Come now. What's that got to do with it?
Mrs. De Winter had everything in the world to live for. The doctor had told her she was going to have a child.
I'm afraid it won't do any good, Colonel, coming all the way to London. We know what the doctor will say.
You never can tell, Maxim.
Oh, Danvers wouldn't have lied. She must have known we'd check her story.
Well, Maxim, that's what we're doing.
Frank, if the doctor bears her out, I haven't a chance.
First, let's hear what the doctor says, if he says it.
Well, gentlemen, I've been doing a good deal of thinking in there. We doctors have certain ethics, of course, but under the circumstances...
You mean that you'll answer our questions?
If they pertain to medicine.
That's fair enough. Doctor, the last time you saw Mrs. De Winter, what did you tell her?
I told her she was carrying a child.
You did?
And that she'd never bear it.
Why not?
Cancer. Deep-rooted and malignant. She couldn't possibly have had more than 2 months to live.
I was right, gentlemen. It was suicide.
Maxim, there are certain laws about speed, you know.
When I telephoned, she said she'd wait up. Frank, there's something you don't know.
No, there isn't.
I didn't kill Rebecca, Frank. But I know now that when she told me about the child, she wanted me to kill her. That was her plan.
I don't think about it anything more. Don't even...
Frank, look. Look, over that hill.
That's strange. It's too early for the dawn.
That's not the dawn. That's fire. Frank, that's Manderley. Frith, where's Mrs. De Winter?
I thought I saw her, sir.
Where? If anything's happened to her...
Maxim! Oh, thank heaven you've come back.
Oh, darling, are you all right?
Oh, Maxim, it's Mrs. Danvers. She's gone mad. She started the fire. She said she'd rather destroy Manderley than see us happy here.
Look, the west wing.
Maxim, she's up there in Rebecca's room. Mrs. Danvers!
There it goes.
Maxim.
It's over, darling. It's all right. It's all over now.
Oh, is it, Maxim? Is it really over?
Fire burns clean, they say. Even shadows.
Even shadows. No more shadows between us, Maxim. No more shadows. Ever.
Thank you, Brian Ahern, Joan Fontaine, and Agnes Moorehead for your splendid performances tonight. Incidentally, this is Miss Fontaine's second program this season with the Lady Esther Screen Guild Players.
I've enjoyed it, Mr. Bradley. Knowing that the benefits of these programs go to support the Motion Picture Relief Fund makes our appearances here a real pleasure. And now, here's a word from one of our best-known beauty authorities, Lady Esther.
Thank you, Miss Fontaine. The other day, I was telling a group of women about raw face powder. And one of them said to me, "Raw face powder? What do you mean by raw powder?" Well, I took her into my laboratory and showed her what I meant. First, I showed her Lady Esther face powder being mixed and sifted, the way most face powder is made. I let her look at it under a microscope and even try it on her skin. "Oh, it's much smoother and finer than the powder I use," my visitor remarked. "But it's not smooth enough for me," I said. "I call Lady Esther face powder raw powder at this point, and I put it through a second process." Then I took her into another room and showed her how my powder, first mixed in the usual way, is then blown by twin hurricanes, blown until it's no longer just powder particles, but a smooth, flattering film of beauty. "Now," I said to her, "now look at Lady Esther face powder under the microscope and try it on your skin. See the difference? See how it helps hide little lines, big pores, how it gives your skin a smoother, more youthful texture?" She looked at the radiant freshness of her skin in the mirror, and she said, "I never dreamed there could be such an amazing difference in the texture of a face powder."
Before we hear about next week's show, a special word from Brian Ahern.
Ladies and gentlemen, every one of us who has invested in United States war bonds has played a part in the victories our fighting men have won. But we know there's still much fighting to be done, and that means two things. If you're not buying war bonds on a regular plan, enlist today under the payroll deduction plan. If you're already buying out of income each payday, increase your purchases. Our fighting men don't give only 10% of their time. They give everything it takes. So we at home must, all of us, do our full share. So please, tomorrow, increase your regular subscription and buy as many extra war bonds as you possibly can. Working together, we can win. But we must all do our full share.
Next week, the Lady Esther Screen Guild Players will present the delightful comedy of errors in a department store, The Devil and Miss Jones. And it stars Lorraine Day, George Murphy, and Charles Coburn. Be sure to listen. Joan Fontaine and Agnes Moorehead can soon be seen in the 20th Century Fox production, Jane Eyre. Brian Ahern is currently starring in Columbia's picture, First Comes Courage. The story, Rebecca, and Miss Fontaine's appearance were through the courtesy of David O. Selznick. Music on tonight's program was arranged and conducted by Wilbur Hatch. To save materials, buy the larger size of Lady Esther face cream. Truman Bradley speaking for Lady Esther, saying thank you and good night.
This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Lady Esther presents the Screen Guild Players. The Screen Guild play tonight, The Devil and Miss Jones. The starring players...
This is Lorraine Day.
This is Charles Coburn.
And this is George Murphy.
Tonight, Lady Esther presents the Screen Guild Players in that delightful RKO story about the richest man in the world, The Devil and Miss Jones. Charles Coburn plays the richest man, J.P. Merrick. Lorraine Day plays Miss Jones. And George Murphy plays the boyfriend, Joe O'Brien. As the richest man in the world, J.P. Merrick had almost forgotten he owned the Neely department store, until the day the store's unhappy employees hung him in effigy. The next day, the store had a new employee. The personnel manager's confidential files described the new employee as Thomas Higgins, a private detective hired by the Merrick Enterprises. But when Higgins reached his home after his first day in the store, his butler greeted him with...
Good evening, Mr. Merrick.
Good evening, George.
Did anyone at the store suspect whom you are, Mr. Merrick?
No one. The personnel manager thinks I'm a detective, and the rest of the employees regard me as an old pauper. Can you imagine that, George? Me, a pauper?
Well, congratulations, sir. A boy or girl, sir?
Confound it, George. Will you stop listening to Abbott and Costello? Where was I?
You'd just become a papa, sir.
Oh, yes. In fact, one of my new associates, a Miss Mary Jones, was so certain that I was impoverished, she forced me to share her lunch. We had tuna fish popovers.
Tuna fish popovers?
Yes, tuna fish popovers. And if I'm not sick tonight, or tomorrow at the latest, my fancy Dr. Schindler from Vienna will wish that he was back in Vienna.
Yes, sir. Did you make any progress in uncovering the miscreants, sir?
Well, I learned who hung that dummy of me outside the store.
That's wonderful, sir. Who was it?
A youngster named Joe O'Brien. He was discharged and barred from the store a week ago. But he has accomplices there, or still working there.
Do you know who they are, sir?
Well, some of them. Miss Jones, the girl who shared his lunch with me, is the most active.
I hope you had her discharged today, sir.
Well, I didn't. There's nothing vicious about Miss Jones. She just lets her heart run away with her head. Unfortunately, she's in love with Joe O'Brien.
Perhaps you could persuade her to forget him, sir.
Perhaps. At any rate, I'll try when we go to Coney Island tomorrow.
You're going to Coney Island, sir?
Yes. By getting friendly with them, I'll learn the names of every malcontent in the store. Besides, I haven't stood up on a roller coaster for years.
Yes, sir. Should I lay out your bathing suit, sir?
No, it's a little shabby. I better rent one at Coney Island. The last time I wore mine, I noticed it had a hole in the knee. The bathhouse locker, Mr. O'Brien?
Yes, and for the 5th time, Pop, will you stop calling me Mr. O'Brien? The name is Joe.
I'll call you Joe if you'll stop calling me Pop. My name is Higgins, Thomas Higgins.
Okay, Pop. You ready to go for a swim?
No, thank you. I think I'll go over and talk with Miss Jones.
Well, I'll walk over with you. Hey, Mary.
Yes, Joe?
I'm going for a swim.
Well, remember, nobody's going to be watching you, so don't show off and swim way out.
All right, baby. Save me something to eat.
Be careful.
Don't worry, Miss Jones. Nothing will happen to Joe.
He's a pretty good swimmer. He's pretty good at everything.
You couldn't be prejudiced?
Maybe.
Isn't it possible you're reading virtues into him that don't exist?
Don't you like Joe?
Well, that depends upon how much you're in love with him. And I don't think you're any judge.
Who's a better one?
Any outsider. Me, for instance. Look, there's a couple over there. He's biting her ear. Now she's biting his ear. They think they were made for each other.
I think they were, too.
Do you think that if she hadn't met him, there wouldn't be someone else biting her ear now? Do you think he wouldn't be at some other girl's ear? Probably 10 feet away?
Maybe, but it doesn't prove anything. Scientists can write all the books they like about love being a trap of nature, but all the scientists are going to convince other scientists, not women in love. I don't say Joe's the greatest thing that ever lived, and I'm certainly not the greatest girl in the world. It's just, well, two people look at each other and they see something way deep inside that no one else can. And that's it. They feel it, they feel it.
Do you?
Not in the way I see in movies or hear in songs. You know, the touch of your hand, you set me on fire. I'm not the combustible type. But yet, if I knew I'd never see Joe again...
Yes?
I've never even thought of what it would be like not to see him anymore. But if I thought I'd never see Joe again, I don't think I'd care if I lived or died.
I see. But what about Joe's radicalism?
Joe isn't radical, Mr. Higgins.
Not radical? What do you call his hanging that dummy of J.P. Merrick?
Oh, he was just trying to draw attention to the way the employees were treated at the store. Why, J.P. Merrick probably doesn't even remember that he owns Neely's department store. He's the richest man in the world, you know.
Really?
Oh, you ought to see his house sometime.
Have you been in his house?
No. But Joe's walked me past there. We thought we'd talk to Mr. Merrick, but somehow we always lost our nerve. Everybody says he's such a devil.
I see. I think I'll go for a walk until it's time to eat. Maybe I can think of a way for us to get in to see Mr. Merrick.
Well, don't you think you'd better get out of that bathing suit and into your clothes before you go wandering around?
Well, there's plenty of time for that. Anyway, Joe has the key to the locker.
Well, don't wander away and get lost in the crowd.
Think I'm a child? Get lost indeed.
Sergeant, this man claims he was lost.
Well, I am.
Said he couldn't find his bathhouse and he was trying to sell his valuable watch for $1 so he could call his chauffeur. I thought that was suspicious, so I picked him up.
Well, it's suspicious enough for me.
I would advise you two simple guardians of law and order, for the sake of your own future and security, to be very careful of any decision you make against me.
Will you say that again?
Tom Higgins. Well, we've been looking everywhere for you. Joe's gone to the hospital. What happened to you?
I got lost.
Well, thank heaven you're in one piece. Thanks for finding him, officer.
Oh, that's all right, miss. Well, you can call your chauffeur on this phone, Pop.
Chauffeur? What chauffeur?
Yes. What chauffeur?
Well, the chauffeur you were trying to raise money to call.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Let me smell your breath.
I never touch a drop.
Oh, a cork sniffer, huh?
Oh, you must be mistaking him for someone else. He's very poor.
Say, what do you two do for a living?
We work, of course.
Where?
Don't mention the store, Tom. We'd get fired.
Where do you work?
Why, at the automat.
What do you do?
Well, I'm in charge of blueberry pies. I put them in the little boxes.
And what do you do, young woman?
Why, I help him. I snap the boxes shut.
Say, my feet hurt. Can't we be seated while this continues?
You ought to be ashamed of yourself, Sergeant. How would you like it if someone treated your father like this?
Is he your father?
Yes.
Girlie, I catch you in more lies. If he's your father, why did you call him Tom when you came in?
Why, I always call him Tom.
Come here. Now, I'm going to ask you a question, and you whisper the answer, or I'll throw you both in jail. Where were you born? Whisper.
125th Street.
Okay. Now, if this woman's your daughter, Pop, tell me, what street was she born on?
72nd Street.
Well, for such close relations, your stories are a long distance apart. Your daughter said she was born on 125th Street, and you, her father, claimed she was born on 72nd Street.
Well, we were living on 72nd Street, but she was actually born on 125th Street.
And why was she born on 125th Street? There's no hospital there.
Well, I didn't say there was. Her mother was standing in line at a butcher shop. You know, rationing.
Say, what are you trying to give me? There was no meat rationing 21 years ago.
Oh, well, her mother was ahead of her time.
All right, that does it. You're the two who's been selling hot goods around here, all right?
Mary.
Joe!
I'm warning you, girlie. Anything you may say may be used against you.
What's happened?
You go on home, Joe. Tom and I'll meet you there later.
Quiet, you.
How about using a more civil tone, officer?
Oh, me?
Yes, you. If they charge you with any crime, Tom?
No.
Well, then you don't have to stay here. Come on, go on out.
You stay right here.
You've got no right to keep anyone here without a charge preferred against them.
Well, I can fix that. We'll hold them for violating the city ordinance forbidding the wearing of bathing suits on the boardwalk. How do you like that for a charge?
Why, you couldn't hold them for 10 minutes on a charge like that.
Oh, would you like to see another charge?
I doubt if you've got brains enough to think one up.
Joe, keep quiet.
Now, don't worry, Mr. Higgins. He can't shut me up with threats.
Oh, no? Officer, did this man come along peaceful or did he pull back?
Well, he made quite a protest, sir.
Oh, he did, huh? Okay, resisting an officer. Now, would you like to see another charge, Sonny?
Yes, I'd like it fine.
You'd like it fine.
Trespassing.
Suits me.
Soliciting funds.
Keep on.
Peddling without a license.
Oh, you're not frightening me.
Stop! He's frightening me.
And we're throwing a little case of vagrancy. Now, how does that suit you?
Just dandy.
A vagrant? Me?
Oh, I haven't even started on you yet.
Joe, what do you think you're accomplishing?
I'm giving him enough rope to hang himself.
You're giving me enough rope.
Joe, you're an idiot. You're talking me into jail for the rest of your life. Who do you think this man is?
A servant of the people, that's all, and a darn poor one. He works for me. I don't work for him.
How do you like that?
Let him put me in jail.
He's not putting you in jail. It's me, you fool.
All right, let him put us both in jail. I'll holler my head off. This is a free country, you know.
Say, are you crazy?
Who isn't? This just happens to be my own kind of patriotism. And you can't scare me with your small-time Gestapo. I don't care how small the right is. When you try to take it away, I'll fight for it. The Boston Tea Party was started over 1 penny. This is big enough for me. Now go ahead. Put me in jail.
Don't tell me what to do. I'm running this place.
We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility. Well, don't look so startled, Sergeant. In case you don't recognize it, that's the beginning of our Constitution. I'll recite it for you. That'll make me look even more ridiculous, and at the same time, you might get to understand it. Where was I now? Oh, yes. Ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, and secure the blessings of liberty.
That's the way Joe is, Tom. If he thinks he's right, he won't give in to anybody. He's wonderful, isn't he?
He isn't very practical.
No, he isn't, but he's wonderful.
Maybe I'll have a few...
You know, Sergeant, I don't like this.
Yeah, me either. When they start reciting the Constitution, look out.
What can one fellow like him do?
No, it's not him. It gets in the papers. Those civil liberties fellows send a big lawyer down, and what happens in court looks like a murder trial.
For a little thing like that?
Oh, the way they mix it up. It winds up like Abraham Lincoln's trial.
Lincoln?
The last trial took 2 weeks.
2 weeks? My vacation starts Wednesday.
You spend it listening to Abraham Lincoln.
In a nice hot courtroom? Oh, my wife would skin me alive. Hey, you, quiet, quiet! I'm going to suspend charges on all of you. Now get out of here.
Oh, no, just a minute. You're not going to get off that easy.
I'm not going to get off.
We don't want any suspended charges hanging over our heads. We want the charges dropped, and we want an apology.
All right. They're dropped. And I apologize. Now get out.
Thank you.
And this for you, officer.
Who, me?
Yes, you. The next time you bring in a thing like that, I'll throw you right in the ocean.
But, Sergeant, you know I can't swim.
That's what I mean. As far as I'm concerned, you sink.
Just a minute, Sergeant. Just a minute. You can't talk to an officer of the law in that manner.
Oh, I can't I? Get out of here, you busybody.
Oh, no, I won't move a step until you apologize to that officer.
Then make arrangements to have your meals brought in, because I'll never apologize to him.
Oh, you won't, huh?
No.
All right, you asked for it. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union...
Stop it. I give up. Officer, I apologize.
Well, that's better. Come on, Mary. I'll take Tom over and get him dressed. It's time we got started home.
It sounds as though you had quite an exciting day at Coney Island, Mr. Merrick.
Yes, George. That fool sergeant almost exposed me when he offered me the phone to call for the chauffeur.
But the others, Miss Jones and O'Brien, didn't catch on.
No. They were too excited about my being arrested. In fact, Joe O'Brien didn't even notice when he dropped this paper.
What is it, sir? An important paper?
Very important, George. It's a list of 400 names. The names of all the employees who participated in hanging that dummy of me outside the store.
So ends Act One of The Devil and Miss Jones, starring George Murphy, Charles Coburn, and Lorraine Day. Before we hear Act Two, a word from our hostess, Lady Esther.
The other evening, I was out walking, and I happened to look up at the sky. It was full of clouds, and it looked so dull and gloomy. But suddenly one of the clouds blew away and revealed a beautiful sky underneath. It was a lovely soft blue and rose, all slashed with gold. And I thought as I looked at it, just as those clouds hide the beauty of the sky, a wrong shade of face powder can hide the beauty of a woman's skin. And just as the shifting clouds reveal the beauty of the sky underneath, so a change in powder shade often reveals the skin in radiant new beauty. I'm not suggesting that you are using a shade of face powder that is wrong for you. You may believe the shade you use is the most flattering of all, but are you sure? Color specialists say that the wrong powder shade can make you look older, that there is one right shade for your skin which can make you look far lovelier, far younger. Now, there's only one way to know whether your present shade is like the cloud that hides the beauty of the sky, only one way to find the one shade that flatters your skin most. That is by trying the 9 basic shades of face powder. Only then can you be sure that you have found your lucky shade. Why, the very shade that you might never dream of using may be the one shade that really brings out the color of your eyes, the glamour of your skin. I'll send you all 9 shades of Lady Esther face powder, without cost to you, so that you can find your lucky shade. Try them one by one before your mirror. One shade will surprise you by seeming to take years from your looks. To receive all 9 shades of Lady Esther face powder free, merely send a penny postcard to Lady Esther, Chicago.
And now the curtain rises on Act 2 of The Devil and Miss Jones, starring Charles Coburn as J.P. Merrick, Lorraine Day as Mary Jones, and George Murphy as Joe O'Brien. While J.P. Merrick is telling his butler about coming into possession of the list of 400 employees who participated in hanging him in effigy, in another section of town, Mary Jones and Joe O'Brien are having a serious discussion.
Now that the Neely department store has blacklisted me, Mary, I can't get a job in New York, so I just can't see you anymore for a while.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean I can't take up your time anymore.
Is that what you call our relationship, Joe? Taking up my time?
Well, I haven't any right to take up your time when I can't get a job. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Well, you might ask my opinion about that, Joe. What are your plans? Do you want to go out of town? I'll go with you. That's not such a terrible thing to ask me.
Oh, Mary.
Well, if you want me to go with you, I'd like to go. I'd like to marry you. Even the way things are, I'm not afraid.
You're not afraid? How long do you think you'd be in love with me living off your salary?
Oh, that's nothing to be ashamed of, Joe, if you can't help it.
Oh, not to you, but it is to me. You gave me a $5 wallet for my birthday and left the sales slip in so I could exchange it for the money. Next step, you'll be giving me the money, a quarter at a time. I can't be in love under those conditions.
Well, then you're nothing but a coward, Joe, for all your bravery in police stations. You can't even face life. Afraid to get married because you might not be able to get a job.
It's not me I'm worrying about. I'm not going to be locked in a hall bedroom watching you iron my shirts, and nobody's going to make me.
Nobody's going to make you do anything except go home. Go on, unless you're afraid of the dark. Hello?
Mary,
Yes?
where can I find Joe O'Brien?
He's right here, just a second. It's for you, Joe.
Hello?
This is Sam Johnson, Joe. Hey, look, we're in real trouble.
What do you mean? Who's in what trouble?
All of us. Thomas Higgins isn't what you think he is. He's a detective working for J.P. Merrick.
What?
Yes.
How do you know?
I was going through the personnel files tonight and saw the notation on his card. He's been to the meetings. Why, he'll have us all fired.
Now, wait a minute. He has to have some kind of proof. He can't just accuse. Oh, my gosh.
What's wrong, Joe?
Oh, I just remembered. This afternoon, I dropped the list of names of everybody connected with our organization, and Thomas Higgins picked it up.
What are we going to do?
Now, look, you sit tight. I'll come down to the store tomorrow and get that list away from Higgins if I have to knock him in the head.
But you can't even get in the store, Joe. Every doorman has orders to throw you out.
Don't worry about me. I'll get in there if I have to disguise myself as Santa Claus and slide down the chimney.
Good morning, Miss Jones.
Good morning, Mr. Higgins.
That was quite a nice outing we had yesterday, wasn't it?
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I learned a lot of things about your Joe O'Brien that I'd never have expected.
Joe learned a lot of things about Thomas Higgins that none of us suspected.
What do you mean?
I'll let Joe tell you.
Are you Thomas Higgins?
Yes?
You're wanted in the general manager's office.
What does
You
the general
too, Miss
manager
Jones.
want with me?
He wants to fire you.
Fire me? What for?
Well, it's been reported that you're a friend of Joe O'Brien's and Miss Jones.
And he's going to fire me for that?
Oh, you have nothing to worry about, Mr. Higgins. You can always save your own skin by turning in that list of names Joe dropped.
What?
You heard me, you Benedict Arnold in sheep's clothing.
Is that so? I'll show you who's Benedict Arnold in sheep's clothing. I'll show that general manager something, too.
So, you were going to show me something, were you, you rambunctious old billy goat? Why, I'll have you blacklisted and starved to death.
Are you the general manager of this store?
I am.
Well, I don't know how you ever got the job.
It happened that I was the cream of department store managers.
Well, don't forget, yesterday's cream is tomorrow's cheese.
I certainly don't get it.
Well, you will, you sourpuss.
Sourpuss?
Yes, I've seen happier faces on iodine bottles. Why take out your ingrown disposition on these employees? Can't you understand that dealing with them the way you do, you've brought on this civil war around here? That's why they're your enemies.
Enemies? I haven't an enemy in the store.
Then all your friends hate you. I've worked with these people. They've got rights.
Yes, and just what would you suggest?
I suggest that you get a different job if you can't get the confidence of your employees, you bumble-witted idiot.
Say, Pop, you're all right.
Don't you worry about anything, Joe. I can handle this nincompoop.
Well, I'd like nothing better than to get the confidence of my employees.
Oh, that goes right in one nostril and out the other.
Who can I talk to? Who represents enough of these people to mean anything?
Would you consider 400 employees enough, Mr. Allison?
Yes, I would.
Well, there's our representative, Joe O'Brien.
Oh, but how do I know he represents 400 employees? Where are the 400 names?
That's the catch, Mary, you see. He wants the list of names.
Well, without the names, I can do nothing.
This isn't a trick, is it?
Don't be foolish, Mary. Don't trust him.
Well, if there's a right way, Joe, this is it. We're not being fair in asking for trust only on one side.
Well, I'm against giving him the names. He works for J.P. Merrick.
That doesn't prove anything, Joe.
Yes, it does, Pop. He has to be crooked, or he wouldn't be working for that crook.
Just a minute, young man. Who said J.P. Merritt was a crook?
Who didn't?
Will you keep quiet? I can't hear myself think.
Well, you aren't missing a single thing.
Mr. Higgins, have you the list you picked up when Joe dropped it last night?
Yes, I have.
Well, give it to Mr. Allison, please.
All right. Allison, it's going to be terrible if you fool these two young people.
Give it to him, Tom.
Very well. It's yours, Allison.
Thank you. Now, you superannuated old jerk, how dare you come into my office and talk to me like you did? I can outwit morons like you every day on the week and twice on Sundays. That's why I'm sitting behind this desk and you're standing in front of it. I'm going to see that every name on this list... Miss Jones, give me back that list.
Tom, take half this list and eat it.
Wygoat doesn't
Don't
need...
argue. Hurry and eat your half before he gets some of those store detectives in here and takes it away
Hey,
from
where's
us.
Arlen?
Hurry.
Yes, Mr. Allison.
Come in here quick.
Too late. Now, you simpleton, I'll show you who can outwit who. Who are you going to fire now?
You tell me the names of everyone on that list or I'll fire the whole fifth floor for a starter.
Why, that's not fair. Many of the people on the fifth floor have nothing to do with it.
Tell me every name or out they all go, every one of them. Chambers, discard slips for everyone on the fifth floor.
You can't do that to us.
Can't I? Wait till you get your slip and see.
All right, you do, and we'll take our case to J.P. Merrick himself.
Oh, you will, eh? Why, you old idiot. J.P. Merrick could have you thrown out of his house before you could open your mouth.
I don't think so.
Well, I'm telling you.
Just how well do you know Mr. Merrick?
He's a very close friend of mine.
That's interesting. What did you say your name was? Allison? I'll make a point of asking Mr. Merrick just how well he knows you.
I wouldn't do anything rash if I were you, Higgins.
I don't intend to.
You ought to drop your idea of seeing Mr. Merrick.
Oh, it wasn't my idea. Joe O'Brien and Miss Jones had the idea long ago, but they didn't follow through.
That was very fortunate.
Yes, fortunate for you and the rest of the petty dictators around here. This time they're going to see J.P.
And just what will that accomplish?
Well, of course, I'm not positive. But if I were you, I'd start reading the help wanted, mail. Come on, Joe and Mary.
Then am I to understand, Mr. Merrick, that Miss Jones and Mr. O'Brien still think you're Thomas Higgins?
That's right, George. When I left them in the hallway, I told them that I was going to find Mr. Merrick and see if he would talk to them.
Yes, sir.
Well, open the door and tell them he'll talk.
Very well, sir. See you now.
Thanks. Gosh, Tom, you must know Merrick pretty well to bust right in like this.
I probably know him better than anyone in the world.
Has he talked with the general manager yet?
Yes.
Oh. Well, I don't suppose he'll pay any attention to what we have to say then.
That's not fair, Mary. If he'll take time to see us, he'll at least listen to what we have to say.
He's probably seeing us just because he's a friend of Mr. Higgins.
As a matter of fact, he's very fond of both of you.
Huh? Well, what does he know about us?
Well, as a private detective, I've learned a great deal about you both. And as a private detective, I recommended that Joe be made head of employee relations of all Merrick Enterprises.
What?
Yes. And as J.P. Merrick, I'm ready to accept my recommendation.
As who?
J.P. Merrick.
J.P. Merrick?
You, J.P. Merrick?
The devil himself. Well, what do you say, Joe? Will you take the job?
Oh, he certainly will, Mr. Merrick. Now he has no excuse for not marrying me.
Well, Joe?
Well, what can I do? I'm between the devil and Miss Jones.
Thank you, Lorraine Day, Charles Coburn, and George Murphy, for your fine performances with the Lady Esther Screen Guild Players tonight.
It was our pleasure to be here, Mr. Bradley. We're all a part of the motion picture industry, and so we know how important the Motion Picture Relief Fund is, and also that the Relief Fund receives the benefits from this series of programs. And now, before we tell you about next week's program, I'd like you to listen to a word from one of America's best-known beauty authorities, Lady Esther.
Thank you, Miss Day. Earlier on this program, I offered to send you free 9 different shades of Lady Esther face powder. Did you ever stop to think that maybe the shade you're now using is not exactly the right shade for you? Well, here's your chance to find the shade of powder that is most flattering to your skin. When you receive your gift, try on one of the shades, for example, Rochelle. Look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, is this my lucky shade? Then try another shade. Try them all, one after another. When you find the shade that's right for you, you'll know it the instant you put it on. Your own eyes will tell you that at last you've found the shade that makes your skin look fresher and smoother, that makes you look younger. So just send me your name and address on a penny postcard, and you will receive all 9 shades of Lady Esther face powder free. My address is Lady Esther, Chicago. I'm sorry, but government regulations will not permit me to make this offer in Canada.
Next week, the Lady Esther Screen Guild Players will present a rollicking farce comedy, Love is News, starring lovely Ann Sheridan and Jack Benny. Be sure to listen. Lorraine Day appears through the courtesy of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Pictures. Miss Day can soon be seen in the RKO production Mr. Lucky. Charles Coburn is now playing in the Columbia picture The More the Merrier. George Murphy can currently be seen in the Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer picture Bataan. Music on tonight's program was arranged and conducted by Wilbur Hatch. To save materials, buy the larger size of Lady Esther face cream. Truman Bradley speaking for Lady Esther, saying thank you and good night.
This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.